Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode is once again brought to you by our friends over at Galactic Comics and Collectibles at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. This episode is Ed Brisson, writer of books such as Old Man Logan, Iron Fist, Dead Man Logan, Sons of Anarchy, Batman Incorporated, Predator, Sins of the Salton Sea, The Displaced, Alpha Flight, and so many more. But this episode, Ed came on to discuss his upcoming comic book over at Dynamite Entertainment, SilverHawks, based on the 1980s cartoon with the same name. Before you listen to this episode with Ed Brisson, check out us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and all those things, wherever you find on social media, as well as over on YouTube as well. But you can check us out on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe on those platforms. This episode is Ed Brisson talking SilverHawks. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, Ed. How are you today?
I think I'm doing okay. Yeah,
I think you're doing okay.
I think
it could be worse. I mean, I know I live in Maine. I believe you live in Canada, right?
Yeah. So I'm
East
in Nova
Coast of
Scotia,
Canada.
so
Yeah.
I'm like up just above you,
Yes, and so
above you
you
to
know,
the side. Yeah,
we're not to say safe up here in New England, but we're
right.
definitely better up in the northeast of this continent than other places in this country or this
Yeah,
this continent,
absolutely.
I should say. So, I've always we talked about it in my office about how Maine is pretty safe in that sense. I mean, there's no like insects that are gonna kill me. There's no real tornadoes or hurricanes. I mean, we have to deal with snow. And that's
Right.
about it. I mean, the weather's pretty tame in the overall scheme of things. And so I'm going to stay up here in the Northeast, I think, for a while.
It's tame-ish. I'm original. Like,
Yeah.
well, like I've lived all over, but
Okay.
most of my life I lived on the West Coast. So I've only been on this coast for 7 years now. And yeah, I'm not used to the big storms. Like we get the nor'easterns coming through here, and those are pretty intense. I've never had to deal with those. And also the bugs, man, the ticks.
No,
You
that
had
ticks.
ticks.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
They'll slowly kill you with Lyme disease. But
Yes.
living in BC in British Columbia on the West Coast, ticks are like a thing that people talk about, but like you never really see it. It's like a grizzly bear. You know they're around. You know
Yeah.
one person who's seen one, but you never actually encounter them yourself. Whereas like they're just everywhere here.
They're
Uh,
ridiculous. It's
eh,
a
eh,
it's a scary thing. I used to remember playing it as a kid in the woods here in Maine and just having fun, like just exploring. And now my 3-year-old, I'm like, no. You have to stay out here. Stay on the pavement.
yeah.
You're less likely to get a tick on you.
Anyway,
But
that's my major complaint with the East Coast is the ticks. They got to do something about it.
and it's not the blue one, not the big blue tick. That's the old animated character and cartoon
Right.
character,
Yes.
but no, the actual scary ticks. But you're a comic book writer. How did you get into comic book writing?
I took a very long path into comic book writing. Originally, I wanted to be a comic book artist. And if anyone's seen an interview with me, they've probably heard this before, so I apologize to those people. But when I was younger, I wanted to be a comic book artist, and I lived in a town called Kelowna in British Columbia, uh, pre-internet, so there was no way for me to meet writers, like
Mhm.
people who wanted to be writers. Except there's one guy through like my local comic shop who wanted to be a comic book writer. We met up and started working on a project. Um, but like a few things went wrong pretty quickly. One, he was just kind of a dick. And he was like the worst sort of collaborator you want in comics in that like he's a writer and he's like, I'm the idea man. I'm the brains behind it. I'm the star of the show. And the artist is just the person pushing the pencil around the page and making my dreams a reality. So it felt like I was a tool more than a collaborator. Um, which was a weird feeling, but like also he wasn't a terribly good writer. I don't remember a ton about the story, although it was very ElfQuest
Mhm.
inspired and ended with it all being a dream. And even then, like I would think I was 17 or 18, I realized like at least I know I could write as well as this guy. Like he was a good writer. I could recognize I knew I could write just as well as that guy.
Mhm.
And so I just started writing only so I would have stuff to draw, right? And so I wouldn't have to sort of be in this like abusive collaborative relationship with a writer. And I just started writing out of necessity because I needed stuff to draw. I wanted to break in as an artist. Not too long after that is when the sort of whole image thing happened and blew up, and Image Comics became, Image Comics. And
Mhm.
so there was a lot of artists who just left and were writing for themselves. And so I was like, well, shit, I'll just continue doing this. And I did that for a long time. So I wrote, I drew, I lettered, I colored all my own stuff for Jesus Christ, 14 years, I think, roughly, give it 14, 15, actually, I think 16 years.
Mhm.
Irrelevant, but I did that all. So I was honing my skills. I took a couple, I went to college two different times throughout that period. I went first for fine arts. I wanted to be an artist. And then I went a second time, just took everything and took a bunch of writing courses. And I just kept honing my skills. And eventually, after about 15, 16 years, I realized I don't like drawing. I thought I really wanted to be an artist, but through, developing my skills as a writer, I realized actually just the writing is what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
Um, and like through that, I had done a couple like short projects where I'd worked with other artists, and I really, really enjoyed working with an artist, collaborating with an artist, and sort of building things together. And I'm not someone who like thrives on working on by themselves, just kind of tucked away. I love having a partner and bouncing things off of them and sort of us building this thing together. And so after like about 15, 16 years of that, I just stopped drawing, like quite literally on my birthday. I had this sort of like sit down conversation with myself, and I stopped drawing and I only focused on writing. And I started a series called Murder Book, which is short crime stories. And I just decided to kind of prove myself as a writer. And I did that for, God, I think I did it for like 3 years. I started just writing stuff, self-publishing, very short crime stories. And actually 2 years, about two and a half years is when I got my first image book, because I'd run into Michael Walsh. We'd done
Gosh.
a couple short murder book stories, and then we started pitching stuff to Image because we really liked working together, and that's kind of how I got my first image book. I did 5 or 6 books at Image, and then started getting like offers from Marvel and DC, etc. But that's the 10-cent tour of how I got into writing.
That's awesome. I mean, do you feel like as a writer, you opposed to illustrating that you get to tell more stories because you have it doesn't take as much time to illustrate it as to craft a story.
I think, yeah, and that was actually part of my frustration with drawing, is just that writing, I could sit down and I could get the ideas down and I could get them out. And like, I'm, I would say I'm a little bit of a slow writer. Like, so I think, like some people can turn out a script in a couple days. It usually takes me, if I'm sitting down 7 to 10 days to do a script. So like I can tell 3 stories writing in the time that it would take me to draw one story.
Mhm.
And that was a big thing, I think, why I made the switch, is because I had all these things I wanted to get out. But because I was drawing them, I felt I just wasn't moving at the pace that I wanted to. And it was like pain. I felt like it's like you're like a horse kicking at the barn doors, right? You just want to get out and kind of do it. And that's part of why I got into it. Is because I want to. There's a whole bunch of stories kind of locked inside my brain that I need to get out there, and I would
And,
never get to it if I was drawing them all.
exactly. I think that's, I think a lot of even artists nowadays, well-known artists that are known for their artwork seem to be writing a lot more than illustrating because of the fact that they have a lot of stories they want to tell. I know
Yeah.
Kyle Starks has mentioned that, Scotty Young has mentioned that, like the idea that you can't draw everything because if you do, you don't have any time to tell all the stories that you need to be that you want to tell. But you've told stories. You've told image. You mentioned image. So you've created your own stuff. You've told intellectual property in well-known characters. You've done Marvels and DC, all that stuff. Is there one that stands out to you that is either the most fun, or are they all basically that just have their own individual bonuses and positives and negatives?
Yeah, I think that for the most part, everything just kind of has this like everything kind of serves a different bit of excitement for me, right? There have been some things where like I've worked on a project that I would never want to repeat, like some things that just didn't work out. But I like trying different things. I like to sort of branch out and sort of stretch my muscles, I guess, a bit. But yeah, like if I had to sort of lock myself into a genre or two, it would be crime or horror or a mixture of both. But like for me, I grew up reading Marvel and DC, so working on a lot of those projects, um, is very exciting for me because these are things that have been around my entire life and I've always wanted to take a crack at. Same with like, I did Predator.
Yeah.
I've done 3 volumes of Predator, and I'm a massive, massive Predator fan from childhood. And even when I was younger, before there was a term for it, I would write like, Predator fan fiction when I was in elementary school. So, they kind of these are things that serve these like kind of long held interests of mine. But I think with like a lot of the crime or a lot of the creator own is where I get like more sort of deeply personal. Like the Displaced, for example, it came out earlier this year. So it's like a deeply personal story for me because it's this big sort of mystery about what happens to the city of Oshawa, but on a deeper level, it's about my own relationship with the city that I grew up in, because I grew up in Oshawa, Ontario, and moved away when I was a teenager. So there's a lot of me sort of working through a lot of my feelings about the city.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't tell those stories with Dead Man Logan or
Sure,
or
right.
like Iron Fist. Like that's kind of a little harder to weave those things in. Sometimes you can, but like it would be a little harder. I just thought of something. So you did Predator, and Zach Thompson did Alien Romulus. Is there an Alien versus Predator for these Nova Scotia people that needs to be coming from Marvel at some point?
It would be great if they are, but I don't know what their plans are with that, to be honest. Like when they first hired me to do Predator, I that was one of the first questions I asked, and they said that they wanted to build up to it. So
Yeah.
so we'll see. But yeah, it
I
would
just
be
think it's
great.
funny. You guys
Yeah.
both from Nova Scotia right now. They'd be great,
Well,
neighbors.
he's in PEI, which is
Oh, okay, yeah.
just next door, but yeah, and then so it's a maritime. We're all in the
Yeah.
Maritimes, and people from Nova Scotia have recognized that a lot of the planets and bases and stuff in my Predator run are actually named after Nova Scotia towns and villages and such.
Yeah, I forgot about this PEI. Nova Scotia. Nova. My son's name is Nova, so there we call him Nova
Okay,
Scotia all the time. So it's always in my
perfect.
brain. But yeah, sometimes you just call him Scotia, and he's like, people are like, "What?" I'm like, don't even ask. And it's not named after the comic book character either. I was literally
Right.
after the fact that I was like, "Oh yeah, there is a Marvel character named Nova." No, but yeah, I was thinking the two, two people who reside in Canada. It'd be funny to see you guys do Alien versus Predator on that. But yeah,
Sure.
you've done Predator. You've done Thundercats, Hellraiser 24, Sons of Anarchy, RoboCop. I mean, those are all like a lot of people have a lot of fandoms to these things, and you've been able to dabble in these, and you have an upcoming SilverHawks comic book coming out too. You just get to play with people's childhoods. That must be fun.
It is. It like I usually will only take on a project if it's something I've got some sort of, attachment to. So
Attachment to
for
you.
me, like I'm going back to my own childhood or going back to my own interests and such. Um, so yeah, and hopefully the other people who are reading have the same attachment that I do and feel the same way about it. Um,
Or you
and
absolutely
yeah,
ruin someone's childhood.
yeah, and that's definitely, like that definitely can happen too. Not it's not possible to please all people all the time. For me, I'm just worried about, telling stories that excite me and that I want to see, and then just hope that everyone uh, feels the same excitement
Yeah.
and has the same feelings about it.
I think that was cool about it too is with you doing those Thundercat stories and the upcoming Silverhawks is that there are, I think, a generation of new readers to comics, or even people who like animated television that may not even have ever watched or seen these things. They're just stumbling upon these now too. Do you feel like a sense of responsibility to usher these new readers in?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Silverhawks is an interesting one because that, I think like it was on the air 39 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like it's quite a while. They haven't had, there was a comic book that came out at the same time
Mhm.
that ended, I think, in 87.
Mhm.
But we haven't had any Silverhawks anything since then. Like, we've had plenty of Thundercats along over the years. There's been
Yeah.
the two TV show reboots. There's been 4 or 5 different comic books. Um, but yeah, Silverhawks has been it's always the kind of like it's the sister show to Thundercats. It's the
Yeah.
second one that came out from Rankin Bass. It only lasted a season, which is weird because it's also 65 episodes, which
It
is
was it weekdays? It aired Monday through
every
Friday
day.
every
Yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah. And that's the equivalent of like 8 seasons of a show these days. Um, but yeah, it's one that I loved growing up and always thought, there was a lot of potential with it to sort of there like a lot of the bones are great.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that was there is great, but there's a lot of potential as well to sort of uh modernize it for like or update it for like modern audiences.
Mm.
There's a lot of really interesting stuff that already exists. It already has like, we've been talking about it as this Untouchables in space. Is sort of our approach, but that's that was already there and baked into the cartoon. It's about an elite group of space cops put together to take down this international or this intergalactic mobster. So yeah, but for sure, I think I don't know if most, but a lot of people who are coming to this comic don't know what the Silverhawks are not familiar. So there is that sort of pressure. Like it's like it's the first time it's had a crack at being anywhere in 4 decades. So there is this pressure to really like make sure it lands and make sure it sticks and that people will stick around for it. I try not to think about that when I'm sitting and writing because it's that pressure might crush me, but it's definitely there in the back of my mind.
I do believe. I think. Can you even watch them on? I think you can watch it like on YouTube. I think you can pay for each episode. I think
Yeah,
it's still able to be watched. I just don't think it's on TV. The last time it was on TV was like 2000. I think it was syndicated for a
yeah,
little bit,
I'm not
but
sure because I probably haven't had proper cable since then. So I've been streaming since about 2000. Whenever they launch all the streamers. So
yeah.
yeah, I know you can buy it because I
Yes.
own digital copies of it. Um,
Did you watch a
uh,
bunch before you started writing this again, or
yeah,
did
yeah,
you? Okay.
I've been like I watched 3 or 4 a day to get through the 65
Mhm.
episodes, and I'm going back and forth because I'm also writing Thundercats Lost,
Yeah.
so where there's 120 some odd episodes, and so I keep going back and forth between the two shows to make sure I'm up to date and going through for like a second time just to keep all that sort of stuff in my brain. But yeah,
Without
it is
trying to.
available.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things that readily, like, it's not one of those things where you can just like pop on Netflix and watch all the episodes. You have to
Right. You
purchase
have to
these
buy
things. It's
it.
not,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Which it may in the future because it sounds like in the Cellverse they're working on things that are potentially going to come out at some point with this stuff too, which would be kind of cool. But like, do you think that without alienating those people who are big fans of this original series, do you think it holds up?
So I do think I think the thing it does really well is like the action and the characters and stuff. They're really fun. It it has like periodically has some story threads that sort of continue, but not terribly. It kind of resets um every episode almost, like we have it like a new status quo, like Monstar's back out there, doing whatever he's doing in the galaxy. I think one of the things that we're doing that I think the show was a missed opportunity in the show is like we are starting a little bit further back we're kind of starting at the same place and further back because we do start with Monstar breaking out of prison, which is the inciting incident in the show, but we are also taking a step back with each of the members of the team and showing who they were before they became Silverhawk. We're showing how their lives are impacted by Monstar and his crime cartel. Everybody is impacted in one way or another by him, either directly or indirectly, which is why they choose to sort of join this program where half their bodies are replaced with metal, and they're not quite the same as they were before. So we're taking a bit of time so that you can get to know the characters a bit more, which is in the show the characters kind of you have like a 10-second sort of scene where somebody introduces who they are briefly before that they were on the team, and then we're at it, and we don't really get much of a sense
Yeah.
of who they were beforehand. And so we're trying to do that. We're trying to round the characters out a bit more. Um, and we're also trying to put our feet on the ground a bit more on, like, in the Silverhawks cartoon, they're protecting Bin Lama, but we never really see, like, we have some flyovers of Bin Lama, or like
Yeah.
some very brief scenes there, but we never actually get to see the people who live there and what their day-to-day lives are like. So we're kind of playing around with that a bit more. So we're using the cartoon as like a starting spot, and we're kind of expanding on a lot of stuff that this cartoon would had talked about or alluded to, and we're just doing deeper dives.
Well, I think you have the ability to. I mean, your audience is maybe a little bit older now, nowadays, because you're focused on, that nostalgic part of it too. So like someone who's 15 years old may not know who the hell Silverhawks is at all.
Right.
Whereas like someone myself, who I'm 38, was like, okay, it came out the year I was born, but I didn't really watch it right off the bat because obviously I can't. I mean, I could have watched it, but I'm not gonna get
Sure,
it
yeah.
what's going on. And so you have the ability to, like, flesh things out a little bit, whereas in the cartoon was really just trying to get people to interact. And it was also, I mean, that was used as a gap for Thundercats, as well as, I mean, selling action figures, comics, all that stuff is
Yeah, yeah.
the secondary or the motive of a TV show back in the 80s and 90s. And so yeah, you have the ability to do this. So you'll be telling news stories, but also, like, so you don't need to have watched Silverhawks, the
No,
65
absolutely.
episodes, to
We're
understand
like,
what's going
this is very much a new reader friendly book, while also not ignoring the people who are coming to it because they're fans of the original series. You're still going to get that thing you loved from the original series. It's just going to be a deeper dive. You're going to get to know more about, Bluegrass. You're going to get to know more about Quicksilver,
on.
Copper Kid, etc., including in some cases their real names, which were never like revealed throughout. Like, the show pretty much was just like, oh, here's their code names for people like Bluegrass or Hot Wing. They never had actual names. So, these are some gaps we're kind of filling in. So if you're a fan of the show originally, you're just going to get, it's the same, like, but it's more, if that makes sense. And if you're new to it, don't worry, we're going to catch you up. Like, it takes 4 issues before the team is even fully together and out there fighting as Silverhawks. So we spend some time sort of building it and earning it.
That's awesome. I love that way of telling a new older story. I mean, similar what I was so proud about with Netflix and the Daredevil series, where it was like Matt Murdock didn't really actually like wear the costume till the end of the first season, because you're like, okay,
Right.
he wouldn't immediately just be like, I'm Daredevil and here's my costume. Like, you have to
Right.
get to that point, and building the team is a good way to get people introduced to Silverhawks. Are you surprised? I mean, you obviously are working on this project, but with Space Ghost and with all the Thundercats and all this, is this a surprising thing to you that these are actually going to be like this popular right now, or is it just because of the nostalgia we live in right now? You're not really that surprised about it.
I honestly, I don't know, because like, it seems there's a lot of love right now for a lot of these 80s
Mhm.
cartoons, like Transformers and G.I. Joe as
Yeah,
well. We've got the Thundercats. There's the Oni's got their whole line of stuff that they're doing as well. Um, it's cool because this is a lot of the stuff I grew up with. So for me, I'm just very excited to see these things come back around. And, in some cases, uh, they're like with Silverhawks, it's their second chance to
yeah.
sort of shine. I think there's some good ideas that were almost lost to time that are now finally being brought out into the light. And so I'm excited about it. Um, yeah, surprised. I don't know. I honestly, like, I've given up trying to predict how things are going to do, because it feels like I'm right about half the time, and things I think are just not going to do well, do amazingly, and things I hope will do well, don't. But yeah, I don't. I think that the age,
Yeah.
it makes sense with the age of readers and when these things had their original sort of heyday. So, and I hope it continues, just for selfish reasons, because these are all properties that I like, and I think, the stories I've been reading with most of them have been really good. And you can
Yeah.
feel that there's this like love for the original properties that's kind of being poured into it.
Mhm.
That's what we're trying to do with our book as well. And I think you can feel it. I can think you can feel that love and attention and care. And I think more than anything, that's why these things are doing well. I think the nostalgia is a thing that gets you through the door,
Mhm.
but it's not going to keep you there beyond the first issue or second issue, whatever. I think it's that attention, that care, that the fact that the people writing and drawing these things are legitimately fans of the original thing. I think that's what's keeping people there. There's a real energy kind of
Mhm.
going around, and I feel like that's you know, the thing we're trying to capture. This thing I hope keeps all these books going for a while.
I think you're right about that because of the, you've written a number of Marvel characters and so on and so forth. You've been a Marvel fan, you know about Logan, you know about Wolverine, so on and so
Mhm.
forth. But you may not be, and this is not saying specifically you, but the writer may not be a super Wolverine fan. They know enough to get the comic book written and so on and so forth, and they obviously do the research and so on and so forth. But these people getting attached to these things, these new, reintroductions of these 80s and 90s characters, all are very big fans, like you mentioned. Like, I feel
Right.
like there's not a single person, they're not going to tap you and be like, hey, have you seen this show? Cool. Watch all the show. You have never seen it, you don't care about it, and then they've read a comic book. You're actually going to be passionate about it, and so that's what's cool. And you can feel that. I felt that with Daniel Warren Johnson doing Transformers. I felt that with David Pepos doing Space Ghost. Like, you feel that like this person loves this character, really wants to do it well.
And this is, you know, I've mentioned it, I think in other interviews before, but I was going hard at Dynamite to let me write Silverhawks before there was a Silverhawks book. Like when Declan was announced as writing Thundercats,
X-Men.
I'm friends with Declan, and
Yeah.
I immediately I was like, let me know when they're doing Silverhawks because I want to write that book. And you know, every couple of months I would check in with him. I'm like, okay, Thundercats did amazing.
Yeah.
Silverhawks is the next logical step. And then when Nate reached out to me about doing Thundercats Apex at one shot,
Yeah.
you know, when he got me on the phone, I'm like, the first question I asked him is like, when are you doing Silverhawks? I want to write a Silverhawks book. And I think, you know, that's I think why, you know,
Yeah.
I think why I got the book because I was kind of on top of them. But like, yeah, it's like this is a thing. As soon as I knew they were going back to this universe, this is, you know, I wanted the Silverhawks, and so very happy to be here talking to you today.
Yeah.
And
About SilverHawks.
yeah, and that my
I think it's funny.
harassment campaign worked.
I really feel like they were just like, you know what? Let's just do a freaking Silverhawks comic. We'll get
Just
Ed
get this
off
guy
our
off our
back.
back. Yeah.
We'll do it. It doesn't matter if it sells well or not. We'll just get it. It'll shut them up. No,
Uh,
I think it's one of those things. It's funny because I'll like go through the previews catalog at my local comic book shop, Galactic Comics in Bangor, Maine, and I will flip through things and I'll be like, oh, look at this, and someone will go, Thundercats, and then like it was this like really just surprising thing, and then like with Silverhawks, like Silverhawk, and it brought this like this talk and discussion that I felt like no one forgot the show, but it was like all pushed to the back of their minds. Like it wasn't
right.
in the forefront. It wasn't like none of these people were like diehard Silverhawks and had all of them on DVD and were like doing all. It was literally just like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that show, and it brought back this like, I don't know, like there's this discussion in the comic book store that we don't typically get nowadays when they're like, "Oh, do you see this new Wolverine story, or see this Miss Marvel story?" It's like it was this weird discussion that I just felt like, I don't know, I felt like it was in another world. It was like this cool time where people like being nostalgic and then, oh, I hope they do a comic book of this one or
Right.
whatever it may be. And I feel like that's what's cool what Dynamite's doing right now, and other companies are doing it as well. But Dynamite seems like they're really pulling these nostalgic strings for people and getting people talking, which is really cool.
Yeah, agreed. And like I said, like, you know, hopefully it resonates, and then we can keep going with Silverhawks, you know, forever. I'd like it'd be great if we could outlast like the original comic book series, and I guess that was only 7 issues, so it won't be hard. Or the TV series, you know, hopefully we go several seasons.
Well, one season, 65 episodes.
Yeah, yeah,
But
it's
no,
true.
it was so funny when you see that back in the 80s and 90s, like TV shows. There's ones that were like 20 episodes for the first season, 75 episodes for the second season, 18
Yeah.
episodes for the third season. It was like this weird. They just like, okay, we're gonna cut the season here. Sounds good. Nowadays, there's so much like thought that goes into these things to make how long these episodes are or these series are. It's kind of funny. I still think your best comic is the TMNT X-Files crossover.
You like that one?
I'm a huge X-Files fan and a huge
Okay.
TMNT fan, and I've always complained about the fact that there's some crossovers with TMNT or other teenage style comics that don't make any sense to me. Like I loved TMNT Batman, but like it didn't make as much sense to me because of the fact that like TMNT and Batman don't live in the same
Right.
worlds. Like the one that recently, the Stranger Things ones, made sense to me. Stranger Things TMNT because they're both 80s, they're both teenagers, they're both all that made sense to me. And so X Files, they're mutant turtles. So it makes sense for a
Right.
crossover. So that's what I like about it. So
It was a weird one because that was one of my very first work for hire gigs. I think because that was 2013, so I just had my Image series had come out in November of
yeah,
2012. Um, yeah, it was a weird because IDW they contacted me and they're like, "We want to do a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles X-Files crossover issue and want to know if you want to write it." I'm like, that feels weird to me. Like I don't know. And I actually had to debate it for about a week. I didn't know if I wanted to do it. I'm like, but there was part of me, I'm like, just wanted to see if I could make it work.
yeah,
Like it because
yeah,
it felt like there are two things that I love, right? I grew up reading the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic.
yeah.
Obviously I was into the cartoon when it came a little bit later. And X-Files was a huge X-Files junkie. I lived in Vancouver, so it was always um filming around me. And one of my
Filming it.
biggest regrets is actually I was supposed to be an extra in one of the final episodes, but couldn't. I got scheduled for work and could not get out of it. To go be there. It would
Yeah.
like you would never have seen me. It was a big crowd shot, but
Well, you would have had that on. You're like, you'd have been like, I
I
was
would,
there. I
yeah,
did it.
I was there, yeah. But yeah, I just trying to make those two things work, and yeah, I had a lot of fun writing that because I did a sequel to an X-Files episode called Bad Blood, which is Vince Gilligan
Yeah.
from Breaking Bad fame episode about the pizza delivering vampires, and that felt like an easy in
Hmm.
with the story, with the pizza delivery guy, and no, it was a lot of fun. And, I got to work with Walsh again, and
Yeah.
Adam Gorham actually inked it. Jordy Belair colored it. Uh,
It's an all-star crew if you think about it.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. Pardon me there. It was a lot of fun, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's one that doesn't come up very often
No, it
during
doesn't. And I
interviews
always
or
remember just like,
signings.
I think it'd be amazing. I think if you ever got that chance to be the extra on it, you should have just been like, that's how you put your like when you go to conventions is like writer of these comics, and then at the very end it says
Yeah,
extra on the X Files. Because I feel like my buddies who own a convention always get contacted by like, hey, I was in The Walking Dead. They're like, oh, cool, what'd you do? I was Walker 7,900 in the herd,
right.
and it's like they always use that as their like resume. They were on The Walking Dead. I'm like, you could have used that. You could have used it to get like signings and
Perfect. Yeah.
like photo ops with people. I was on the X Files. No, but yeah, I think it's amazing. I think the SilverHawks, coming out here on January 29th from Dynamite is going to be a cool, again, nostalgic trip, down our past, but also. I think some of these characters that people forgot in time, giving them an opportunity to read something that maybe they even missed, they didn't even understand was there. And I think that there is this, they are hand in hand with Thundercats. So if you're a Thundercats fan, I think that the themes in the story, the stories that are going on and the way they're told, I think people will be fans of Silverhawks as well. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. They're very different kind of worlds.
Yes.
But I think Thundercats is more like kind of fantasy based, even though they
Hmm.
have some tech involved. And but yeah, Silverhawks is definitely like sort of future sci-fi. But it's got a little bit of that with with Monstar.
Hmm.
He's basically like almost like a werewolf in the way that he changes powers. He's not a werewolf, but the way
Yeah.
which is the thing where actually his power changing is something
Yeah.
we're sitting on for a bit. It's not going to happen for a little
Yeah.
bit, but yeah, I think so. If you're digging Thundercats, you'll probably dig Silverhawks. It's been a ton of fun to write. Working with George has been pretty incredible. He's a great artist, and Nate, the editor, has been great. He's a really sharp editor, really great notes, really helping to sort of guide this whole,
Mm.
I guess, universe. So it feels, even though they feel unique, it all feels as part of
Yeah.
a larger universe.
And you have the Thundercats Apex, and then you have Thundercats Lost coming as well. I mean, are you working on other stuff too, or are you solely focused right now on Silverhawks?
Yeah, so I'm working on Silverhawks. I'm working on Thundercats Lost, which is a just real quickly is about a separate convoy that's sent out from Thundera before it's destroyed to try and find a new habitable planet. And it's about it involves the second season Thundercats. So Bengali, Lingso, and Pamera, a couple new Thundercats that Rafa and I created together. They're kind of shut down behind enemy lines and being hunted and trying to survive on the strange new planet. It's been an incredible amount of fun to do. I have four books at different stages of development,
Okay.
aside from these that haven't been announced yet. But mostly my last year has been spent and still right now. I've been working video games, so I'm
Okay.
writing. I'm working on a video game that I'm a writer on, and which is all top secret stuff until
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
announced, I guess. But so yeah, I realized I was just about to say that's why I haven't been working on as much lately. But then, like I just also said, I have six books coming out, so
Yes.
who knows what the hell I'm talking about. But yeah, these are the two big things right now are the Silverhawks and Thundercats book. I do have a Tales from the Crypt story that just dropped or is
Okay.
just coming out from Skybound, and then four books that will be announced in coming months. I think two of them are going to be announced in the next month or two.
Nice. That's it. I love your obviously your Marvel stuff, and I'm a big fan of anything you dive into these IP stuff too. But Sinzo, Salton Sea, and Displaced were amazing.
Thanks.
Recent creator-owned stuff. The Displaced was phenomenal in my opinion, and so we're definitely looking forward to more from that from you. But in the meantime, Silverhawks is available on January
Yes.
29th, so hopefully people will grab that and also grab your Thundercat stuff as well. And obviously Displaced and those other ones, like I said, Sins of the Salton Sea are all available in trade as well. So that's worth
It's
we're picking
correct.
those up in 2025. But yeah, I really appreciate it, Ed, coming on and chatting comics and Silverhawks and all that stuff here. I hope that the rest of the winter you stay warm. I know it's a little cold.
It's actually not too bad. It's Halifax. I don't know how you guys are with snow
Yeah,
and stuff right now, but it's like we don't have much snow.
yeah.
It's okay. I'm getting by with a sweater. I don't even need a winter coat on right now.
Yeah, we had snow over the weekend, but other than that, it's been up and down. It's the world of climate is very different nowadays than it has
Yes.
been in the past. So I don't know what to expect. I'm always like, oh yeah, I can wear shorts tomorrow in Maine, and then the next day a blizzard. So it's a unique world we live in right now. But I really hope that yeah, maybe we'll cross paths sometime in the future. But until then, I appreciate you taking the time out to talk comics and so much more. Yeah, Ed, good luck with the release of Silverhawks.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for having me,
No problem.
everyone.